This will be the last presentation of the afternoon. Madam Speaker, you like it, eh? Okay. Our afternoon session officially calls to order, and we'll begin with change of schedule. We will have presentation on willfulness and mindfulness. Am I correct on? Okay. And without further ado, I would like to call upon Senator Torres to introduce the presenters and the topic very briefly before we start.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today's presentation, fitting with the theme of this APIL conference, is going to be on wellness or willfulness and mindfulness for legislators. And I will let the presentation develop the theme and the grounds for how we arrived at this presentation. So I think that the presentation speaks well for itself, and I'll let it develop on its own course. The presenters today are going to be myself and my very agreeable husband, Justice Robert Torres from the Guam Supreme Court. And he is going to, I asked him because in our relationship at home, not only what we do as me as an elected official, but him also as an official of one of the third co-equal branches of government, we have to balance what it is to be a family and what it is to be public servants as well. So I took the liberty of volunteering him to present to us, because I think that what he's learned in his branch of government, we now need to apply it to our branch of government. And this might be a good first start to understanding those concepts. So I will join him in the presentation, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Honorable Justice Robert Torres, you have the floor.
And mindfulness for legislators and health is wealth. I thought about what the judiciary has been doing, and especially in the last few years, where they've been focused on the health and well-being of judicial officers. So the first thing I want you to understand is that self-care is not being selfish, and it's important as legislators, as judges, that we take care of ourselves first and foremost. And you'll see why there are a lot of reasons for that. And so what we want to be able to do at the end of the presentation is list some objectives, and I'll go through them. And both for developing wellness programs, maybe at your respective legislators, as well as some tips to think about improving your mindfulness and your well-being. We have done a lot about the polling, and so here's our first poll. I know some of you, if you haven't had a chance to join yet, you can go to slido.com and just type in APIL. So let's see, here's the first question: who was the first president of the FSM? And just type in your answers, and let's see if it's coming up. You see the poll? There's some people coming in. You can see the votes. And you can see all the votes that's coming in. Half of us think Toshio Nakayama, some think it's Manny Mori, some Bailey Otter. And this was just our test. Actually, the first president was who, Vice Speaker?
Okay, it'll be loud, Mike.
Yes, Toshio Nakayama from CHUP was the very first president of the FSM. So that's just a test, and as we go on, there'll be about 4 or 5 other chances for us to interact with our, social media and phones to do it. So hopefully at the end of this session, you're going to be able to better identify some of the things that can cause you stress as a legislature. And think about some of the techniques and outlets that you can have to deal with that stressful situation and hope and inspire you to think about mindfulness. And also maybe looking at the importance of establishing a wellness program at your legislature or within your government, and understanding that, and I think we all recognize that there's productivity with health and really a loss and a cost to a government when we don't have health. And we're going to give you some handouts that will help you with from the U.S. Department of Commerce about establishing workplace wellness programs, as well as some handouts with some simple exercises later. So let me just ask this: have you ever attended a presentation on mindfulness or wellness before today? Let's see.
On the poll.
On the poll, you have it again. Some have on both mindfulness and wellness. So this is not a novel subject to some, but for many it is. Probably 3/4 of the room, it is a pretty new subject to think about. Well, let me go through the background of what the judiciary did and what's been involved. As I mentioned, over the last 5 to 8 years, it's been an important topic for the judiciary. And in 2020, the ABA actually looked at the U.S. federal judiciary on stress and resilience. They surveyed over 1,000 judges, and they found that these were the sources of stress for judges. And Madam Treasurer's husband is a judge, so I'm sure she can also attest to some of the stress that he undergoes here. The importance of the decisions that judges have to deal with, their workload, the long hours that they sit on the bench without a break. Sometimes they don't have adequate staff support. Compensation for some might not be great. And for some judges in some jurisdictions, they have to worry about running for election. They have to worry about getting reappointed. There's also a lack of privacy. Many judges, are under the microscope. There's a lot of media reporting or analysis of their decisions. Sometimes you have adversarial relationships with other judges, or maybe even other branches of government. And then there's social media attacks. I mean, social media has given a brand new platform to many people to come in and do whatever they want, say whatever they want, sometimes with impunity and anonymously. Like, you can ask the questions here anonymously if you really want to, and we'll try to monitor them. And of course, some of that has been exacerbated by the COVID situation for many of us, particularly with having to do remote hearings and the like. So the study showed that these were what the symptoms or effects of stress were for judges: fatigue, low energy, depression, and anxiety. In fact, 1 in 5 of the federal judges surveyed showed at least one characteristic of depression or depressive disorders. And, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Georgia pointed out that, hey, while we're dealing with our own problems, or the problems of all these people, we have our own problems to deal with. And he's concerned that lawyers and judges the mental health is being attacked and is really becoming a problem for them, and they're not healthy themselves. So what about legislators? As I mentioned, judges reported symptoms of distress, sometimes interpersonal problems, and they don't want to share sometimes their feelings with their colleagues because they don't want to feel weak or vulnerable. So,
And a lot of times, as we know, we're expected to debate and analyze the impact of all the laws that we propose. And we're expected to work very well with our legislators, our colleagues, to resolve these issues. Many people expect us to always listen intently to them and address every concern that they bring before us. We also have to communicate, be able to tell them exactly what it is they need to hear and what it is that our challenges are with our job. Oftentimes, too, we're dealt with problems that aren't our personal values, but we have to deal with them because they are the subjects for the time that have to be dealt with. Also, we find as legislators that there's never enough time to do our jobs, that oftentimes we're on call, we're expected to be accessible all the time. And when people want results from us or want us to at least address their constituency concerns, they expect us to do it timely. We have also, within our branch, the ethical boundaries that many of us are trained in ethics on how to conduct ourselves as legislators, but we're also required to do a lot of reporting to the government that are public records as well. And sometimes the information is disturbing to us, the feedback. But for many of us, in Guam we have a 2-year term. Many of you have 4-year terms, but that re-election in and of itself is a major stressor for a lot of us.
So right now, just as a quick breakout, you can talk to your colleagues, right next to you, and help us identify what you think are the 3 top stressors that you might encounter as a legislator. The 3 top stressors. Just, what is it that you think? And you can either type it in here, talk to your colleagues, and try to do it, and let us know what you think are the stressors that you as a legislator, and I know as a senator, as a congressman, there are issues that are causing you stress, and what you think some of those issues are. And you can type them in and let's see them as they come out, and then we'll talk about that and some of them. Media is always a big issue for senators, under scrutiny. Nowadays, many of the newspapers allow comments to be posted on social media. Personal financial favors from constituents. How many times do they go to Mary, ask for a donation? We wouldn't be able to donate all our salary and her salary combined for as many asks every time coming to look for money. Media again, family obligations. Also, the media, the press. Elections, people worried about elections. It's an election year for many jurisdictions, and that's a highly stressful situation. Time's also a problem. We never seem to have enough. Getting through the bills, financial stress, doing the right thing, that's also a tough thing. Sometimes you want to do the right thing, but the political pressure is there, and it forces you to, think about all those issues that you do, competing interests with constituents. Sometimes you're adversarial with a senator because you're both competing for fundraising, you're both competing in an election against each other, you're both competing for bills. So
or you're just apples and oranges.
Yeah.
That's like one of the biggest problems.
Thing, you have totally different philosophies. So those are great stressors. So let's look at, these stressors. I think many of you identified them, but you know that your decisions are scrutinized constantly, both by the press and the public. What you do, you're out there in the public. You're accountable for statements you make. Sometimes a legislator might make a statement and it gets misinterpreted or might be viewed as intemperate conduct, or you might have just made a mistake. It wasn't a good day for you and you said something and you regret saying what you maybe shouldn't have said at that moment, but it's been captured for perpetuity, right? And sometimes, and it's happened, there's been a situation where senators' conduct or statements they made have come back to haunt them and really destroyed their careers.
And that's the problem, is a lot of times it's all about reputation. Gaining the trust of people is a lot of times dependent on the reputation that you build. But one of the problems that we're having, many of us can agree, is this anonymous blog posts and websites and social media networks that are bombarding sometimes with information that is not correct. And the problem is removing that information is almost impossible from the internet. There are some programs that can release it, but there's ways to always access it. Many of us, even among our colleagues, talk about the character assassinations that we face regularly as legislators, oftentimes unwarranted. And again, in the election season, it's usually when it's most heightened. And this was a conversation I was having with my neighbors from the CNMI. We were comparing who has a worse climate. me or you. And that's the nature that we're dealing with right now. But I think also one of the biggest things many of us pointed out is the financial hardships. Not only people asking for favor and expecting favor and gifts, but also the low salaries that many of us have just to maintain the lifestyles that is expected of us. To always be at places, to always bring things with us.
And how many of you have to be nice to people you really don't like?
Yeah, and do many of us in the room have our public meetings and our sessions conducted on YouTube or on Facebook Live? Yeah.
Or TV.
Or TV. Yeah, so that in and of itself is one stressor. You're always under the microscope and everything you say is always held in perpetuity. So that it makes it hard sometimes to just do your job because you've got in the back of your mind the weight of your words every time you speak.
And your decisions are important. I mean, they really impact the community when you're on that floor and you're making a decision on legislative matters.
And then the worst part is sometimes you're so passionate about something and the other person just can't believe that passion is real. It's like, I can't believe you're still fighting that. Like, why? But, in principle, we do. So that also is a cause of stress.
So here's some funny tips about stress. You know you're stressed when you stress about stress before there's even stress to stress about. And you think that curse words are no more than sentence enhancers. You can't decide if you want a hug or vodka or 3 days of sleep.
And the worst part is when you're in session and you believe that you're waking up screaming from a nightmare and you realize you haven't even fallen asleep, but it just seems like a bad dream sometimes.
So, we talked about what some of the manifestations of stress are. For judicial officers and I'm sure even for legislators around the world, there can be anxiety, fatigue, burnout, abuse, PTSD sometimes. You can have weight gain. You can be irritable, lack empathy. Sometimes it impacts the family life. You have trouble concentrating or maybe organizing yourself or maybe making decisions as quickly as you remembered you made them previously. So there are a number of ways that we can enhance well-being and think about addressing it. Some of these may appear obvious to you as we go through them, and these pictures kind of give you an idea of it, and we'll go through some of that. And then we'll switch after we go through this to talking about mindfulness meditation as a means to help you deal with some of those stressful situations. But there are a variety of ways that you can deal with it. And, we talked about health, wellness, mindfulness. So health is really just a state of physical, mental, and social being. Wellness is a process, it's an active process, and we'll talk about wellness programs, trying to make choices towards a healthy and fulfilling life. And then mindfulness is really about regulatory and self-inquiry training regimens that is used for various reasons. And when we get into the mindfulness meditation aspect of this presentation, I think it will help you and give you some ideas about small exercises that you can do. Andrew, is he here? Can you help our delegate from CHUK join the poll if they can with their phones while we go forward? So, here we go.
So what we know is that to be healthy, we have to have a good life-work balance. Because if you're not healthy and you don't have a good life-work balance, the public won't get the timely and effective service that you need. Oftentimes we forget that we're humans, we have our basic needs, right? And that we have to all follow our biological systems. We have to make sure that we're rested, that we have a happy state of body and mind together. Because we are, after all, bombarded all day long with our choices that we have to make. And oftentimes this will lead to decision fatigue. You're just overwhelmed, more or less. And sometimes choice can be a good thing, but oftentimes if you have too many choices, it's overwhelming. And that they term the paradox of choice.
So, how, dealing with decision fatigue, of course, some of you, these might seem obvious, but you just have to relax or chill out before you make some of these decisions. You don't want to make a decision when you're not in the best position to make a decision. And you try to get some of the small things that you do. Don't fret making these small decisions that you have to. I don't know how many times we've worried about where we're going to eat lunch today or how we're going to do it. And so we kind of got rid of trying to do that and worrying about that. And, you know, don't be afraid of the decisions you make. Just make them. Don't regret them. If you're wrong, you can always go back and try to remedy what you did, but don't worry about something that you can't control anymore, which is the past. And just try to make most of your time, plan your time, organize your time. I could not survive if I didn't have my calendar on my phone, just because there's so many demands of us on what we're doing. And if I don't have my calendar updated on my phone, likely I'll forget an appointment, forget a call, not make something. So, you know, help use that to organize your time and think ahead. And if you realize, and there's so many demands made of the legislature, you can't go to every party. You can't go to every function. At some point, you just have to tell people, I can't. It's unrealistic. I'm sorry. I won't be able to make it. You can't just say yes and then not be able to do that.
But I think also with COVID, when the COVID shutdown happened, a lot of people appreciate the dynamics of the family. So sometimes saying no for familial reasons, personal reasons, is okay. Or no because my kid has a game is okay. And we're finding that those things are oftentimes forgiven. And we should just go for it. You know, just say no, sorry.
And you have to recharge. That's not just for your phones. You have to recharge, step away. It helps you with your creativity. You know, their hormones get released when you feel panicked, and they create stressful situations and change your mood. So you'll be able to prevent burnout and maximize your performance if sometimes you just step back and recharge. And how do you recharge? You know, you have to think about and be aware of what you're doing. And when we get into mindfulness later, the mindfulness meditation and the exercises, this is going to be very important, is just be aware of what you're doing and feeling at that moment, right then and there. And again, don't worry about things that are outside of your control. Put your energy towards what you can control. Don't worry about so much of the future. Don't worry so much about the past. Focus more on the present and what you can do. And plan for the worst, but don't fret about things that haven't happened yet. And most important, appreciate life. We're so blessed to be here today and doing what we can and participating in this forum that, you know, we just have to count our blessings and appreciate what we have. And mindfulness, when I go through, and there's both psychological, physiological, psychological, and scientific explanations for why mindfulness is important. And it's been proven to treat a whole slew of critical disorders, and it can, when we do these techniques in small ways, and practice makes perfect, we will, it will improve a lot of things with ourselves, and we'll talk more about that when we get into some of the breathing exercises. Very simple, you can do at home, and different mindfulness meditation techniques. So how else can you recharge? You can go to Nan Madol, take a hike. This was us yesterday. We went, and they can see themselves there. Some of them were very good. They walked across the bridge with their cell phones without help. But, you know, that clearly was a great experience for those that went to Nan Madol, and we were close to nature there. You can look at taking a walk in the morning when it's fresh and it's quiet. Think about, I take power naps. I'm not ashamed to say it. If I'm tired in the afternoon, I'll just lay on my couch in my office 10 minutes. I'll set an alarm 15 minutes, but boy, do I feel rejuvenated. And I can approach an opinion and edit it much better. Use your vacation time. Too often we get tied up, oh, I can't go. But if you have vacation time, find the time to do it. Go ahead, keep going.
We had some comments about some people that get 3 hours sleep a night. Double that, triple that. Yeah, sleeping well is important because you need to have at least 5 hours of good sleep. Otherwise, it's the same effect as if you're drunk or went drinking the night before. You know, your mind is just not sharp. But it's also important to what we found in our relationship as husband and wife, and he's been a judge for almost 20 years. I've been a senator for 8 years, and before that, a lot of government jobs. But the key is to focus on positivity. You really have to learn to just shake off all the bad, because that's the only thing that's going to get you through it. A lot of times, just avoid watching bad news. Start your day off right. Don't watch the bad news. Go to the sports section, like they say,
We
right?
gave up
Don't go to the
talk
front
radio
end.
in Guam, just because it's almost every story on talk radio in Guam is more negative rather than positive. So we really don't even bother, and it makes it, it doesn't affect, her job, listening to it. It doesn't affect mine, and we just decided there's more positive things that we can do in the morning than listen to people rant, calling in and talking.
It's also, my mantra really is happiness is a state of mind. So when somebody asks you, for example, hey, how are you doing? You could say, sucks. Could be better. Or you can say, great, I'm great. Your act of just believing that you're great makes your day already on a different plateau. So that's one of the things about positivity, just
And
setting your
also
mind.
lift the state of the person who you're interacting with.
Right. But mostly, too, we have to think about gratitude. Oftentimes we don't look for the good, we focus on the bad. So try to focus on more of the good. When garbage hits you, garbage in, garbage out, even if it's amongst your colleagues, the media, anybody who's a persistent person in the community.
And with the vice speaker who's very positive. Always,
There you go.
Have the speaker always with a good quip, very uplifting.
And then who are the people around you, right? Are you with those people that are going to always support you and lift you up, as they say? So the important thing with socializing, too, is we need to make sure that we mentioned earlier about saying no, sometimes focusing on the family, focusing on those things that are important. Those are the things that you want to develop and continue to foster, those sorts of relationships.
And you want to think about, with your family, developing memories. Spend your money on experiences with them. Don't just give them, monetary gifts or stuff. Instead, try to create the memories, because those go a much longer way than, just giving them an object. Really, the memories last a lifetime, as they say. And, they have to also understand that part of you belongs to the public. It's not just all the family anymore, right? You belong to the public too. And that your stress also affects them. And when the press is bad for you, when they're attacking, Vinny Sablan as a senator, as a candidate, it's also affecting his family, especially in small communities. We have to think about that. And so, you have to understand that. You have to appreciate that with your family. And then, socialize, like doing this. Coming to APIL is a great way. Tonight's softball game is going to be a fun way for us to relieve stress. Eating the food, doing the programs. It'll help us reduce our fatigue. It'll help us reduce some of our stress. And other senators, other legislators provide a good network for people to deal with these similar issues.
Yeah, we found in the legislature, we've had a scenario too where we were a superwoman majority, and that was a very stressful situation because everyone's expecting more of you, right? Because you're a novel. It's the first time it's ever happened. So what was important there was finding what they said, that those friends, establishing that close network with the person that's going to be your ally. And in my situation, it was somebody across the political aisle, like Tina. And she and I have been working together on legislation that couldn't have been done if it wasn't that kind of friendship, So those things work also.
And I know many of you are involved in the community, but think of ways to get involved other than the traditional ways that you normally do. I coach high school soccer, I coach basketball. Mary does going to outreach programs at the school, lectures on careers. I talk to elementary school students. Those kinds of things really they're uplifting to you when you're doing it, and you see how much the kids love you and appreciate what you do. And also don't think about volunteering. Volunteer work for some of these nonprofit. I think Tina has gone to some of the homeless shelters and fed, or doing Thanksgiving program. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. At the same time, you're also building some of your social networks. And of course, you're better at cooking and eating healthy than me.
As we all know, and I think today the staff did a wonderful job of having some healthy snacks in the back. But it's important, and we've been lectured oftentimes about healthy foods. It's nothing new. But we must get back to it. Just always focus as much as you can on healthy foods, because the risk of obesity and heart disease, these are all prevalently in the islands. Diabetes, these are the non-communicable diseases that it's really in our hands to control. So that just we have to take that home. And exercise is important too. They say a half-hour walk a day is the best thing that you can do. You can even have a 10-minute walk early in the morning. If you can, develop things within the day, like walking to your office if you can, walking home instead of, or even parking further. Those things also help.
And if you sort of make this habitual and sort of start with a ritual and get into that, you're going to do your walk at 7 o'clock in the morning for 10 minutes or whatever it is, it'll help you. Like, my office is on the 3rd floor of the judiciary. I don't take the elevator. Every day I just walk the stairs. Some mornings I feel like, should I do the elevator today? And I say, no, let me just go. And I make it a point to, like, even with my marshals or who's ever around, I take the stairs. And so take the stairs, and it makes a difference. And so they all come to know, and they start walking, he's a stair guy, take the stairs. We're not taking the elevator. Because if you don't change your direction, you're going to end up where you're headed, for sure. So, think about that as a motto. So now, I'm going to switch gears. We've kind of tried to lay the groundwork for the mindfulness part of the program. And so we're going to do this now. You think about your brain. Your brain is probably the most powerful tool that you have. It is a 3-pound universe, as they say. And you can't really see this, but the brain is very, very powerful and has limitless power. They say that the brain can actually power a light bulb. And your brain is always turning, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never stops. And you can have 50 to 70,000 thoughts in your mind, and these thoughts become things. So if you start to think negativity and you start to work on that, it's going to manifest itself. And your brain is constantly developing. I mean, even now, your brain can improve, your brain is developing. It doesn't end just because we're getting older at all. And it can go many places. Of course, I talked about your brain going in the past. You're always thinking about the past, but those situations you can't change and you can't control. And the past is what leads to some issues with depression. And then the future, you also are starting to think about the future. I'm not stressing too much about the softball game tonight because I won't be able to play, unfortunately. But it's a situation I can't change and have no control over. So that causes you to have anxiety. So I talked about mindfulness being, a regulatory self-inquiry training regimen, really, which is looking at well-being. And that mind wandering that I talked about can compose about 50% of your waking life, not when you're asleep, but when you're awake. And when it wanders, that can dampen your sensory input. It can sour your mood, especially if you're thinking about all these things that you did that you might have done differently. And it can increase, and if you're under stress, that also increases your mind wandering. So your working memory and your capacity is also reduced. So what is mindfulness meditation? It's really both concepts put together. And you want to have a mindful life, so you want to be conscious of what you're doing. And meditation helps you develop and increase being mindful. So we already talked about the definition of mindfulness, and it's non-judgmental. When we do these exercises, we're going to try to be non-judgmental, and it's really the opposite of mindlessness. How many times have we gotten in a car and driven somewhere or drive, and then you realize, oh, I didn't intend to go there, I wanted to go somewhere else, just because it's habit, or we do things that way. And meditation, everybody here is meditating at least once, in their life, whether it's through prayer, through exercise, music, and it's basically when you do something intentionally for yourself.
So what is meditation? Basically, it's using the power of concentration to build your mind over any distractions. It's blocking out things. It allows you to concentrate on something. And oftentimes, it's really just about practice, how to focus in and clear your mind. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it, essentially.
So, this is now the question. This is not about meditation, but have you tried mindfulness before, where you try to take regulatory regimen or control of your present thought and doing it in a non-judgmental way? There's another way you can answer the polling questions if you have. It's great. Many of us have. Almost more than 3/4 of the people have said they've at least had some sort of a mindfulness exercise.
A lot of times mindfulness is just asking yourself the question, what is going on? Like, where am I at? What is going on? You're sort of assessing the zone that you're in. What is before me? Where am I at? It's as simple as that, catching yourself, right, before you fall.
And meditation has been around for thousands and thousands of years. The oldest documented is in India back in 5000 BC. And Greeks, Buddhists, Catholics, Tibetan, Islam, Jewish, it's transcended many cultures, almost all cultures and religion has been around for thousands of years. So what is it that they were trying to harness through meditation? And there's hundreds and hundreds of types of meditation, but mindfulness meditation really the focus is to focus the mind on something and on training. This is a Harvard professor, a doctor. He actually developed mindfulness meditation back in 1979, and it became a worldwide program called MSBR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. And what he talked about is, again, paying attention in the present moment, non-judgmentally. You use meditation to help develop your mindfulness. And while concentration is intense with many forms of meditation, mindfulness meditation is a very gentle meditation. And it's a very gentle approach to understanding mindfulness, which is, I think, perfect for the Blue Continent. We're very gentle people. We're very loving people. We're, very family-oriented. So I think it's a perfect way for us to look at it. Go ahead.
So what we have to do with mindfulness meditation is you have to train the mind to concentrate so that you avoid yourself wandering. It's like, how do you just zone in when you're at that moment where you're almost panicked? How do you cut it out to say, I am here, this is what's going on? And oftentimes you have to give yourself time, develop time to just learning how to relax, how to catch yourself. And that consistency of always going back to that, catching yourself. I'm okay, this is where I'm at. We're going to breathe through this, we're going to get through this. Just sometimes it's in a split second. So
how do you do it? How do you do this mindfulness meditation? You need to just be silent for a bit. Try to avoid all the distractions. Try to sit up straight. Breathe normally and think about your breathing. as you're doing it, observing it. And don't worry about doing it right when you get started, because there's no such thing as a right way or a wrong way. And as you start to do this, thoughts are going to come in your mind, but don't really start to judge them. Don't think about where they're going to lead you. Just focus again on your breathing. Gently return to observing it. And the key is just starting to do it, and consistency will bring you benefits doing it. And every practice is perfect. And I'm going to give you a handout of different breathing exercises and some other mindfulness meditation that involves when you go on your walk, thinking about it. But ultimately, there's no failures. And after 1 month, I guarantee you're going to see significant benefits with undertaking this. But even if you don't, commit 10 minutes a day to it, and 10 minutes isn't a lot for your health, that sporadic practice are going to provide you benefits. So here's a 1-minute breathing exercise that's been done. We'll just try this now, if we can. And so everyone can get ready, and we'll see if we can do it.
They say stomach breathe, so your stomach has to, like a balloon, so not top heavy, but
You'll feel it into your thing.
so try that, so your stomach, I know we're tired, but it's fine.
So it's been proven that there's been real benefits to doing mindfulness meditation. It gives you some clarity, it gives you calmness. You'll learn to respond rather than react to life situations. It'll lower your stress level. You'll be happier. You'll be less obnoxious to your neighbors. And I think you'll find that more acceptance of things that you can't control. And it's a daily practice, as I said. Posture is important. Getting the habit of breathing correctly, setting the time of doing it, and the handouts will help you guys later. But breathing, amazingly, is one of the most important things you can do to relieve stress and anxiety. And why is that? There are reasons for it, and I'll get into the physiological explanations of it. But the military, the Navy SEALs, also have a breathing exercise that they force all of their SEALs to practice and really become an expert in. And it's simply, and they do it 10 minutes, but they have to do a deep breath, count to 4, and then exhale. So they breathe through their nose, and then they count to 4 while they're breathing in, and then they exhale, again counting to 4. And you can either exhale through your nose or through your lips. And why would the Navy SEALs do it? Because they're under a lot of anxious and stressful moments. And they want them to make the correct decisions when they're going to be in those very anxious moments. And doing this combat breathing helps them make those decisions in very stressful situations. But as I mentioned, there's a physiological effect that breathing has on the nervous system. Breathing slowly activates the hypothalamus, which is connected to the pituitary gland in your brain. And so it sends out these neurohormones that block the cortisol and the adrenaline from being released. And so that's why when the Navy SEALs high stress, the adrenaline's running, they take those breathing exercises to help block that adrenaline, so they make the decision and it makes the body relax. Because if they're high stress and that adrenaline's going, if they've got to take that perfect shot, they're not going to be able to do it with the anxiety and the stress that they want. So breathing deeply and slowly triggers that parasympathetic nervous system that also reduces your blood pressure, reduces your heart rate, and makes you more relaxed. And as we point out, the research shows that there are positive benefits to mindfulness meditation. The professor from Harvard, who I told you from the medical school, has treated over 18,000 business officials all throughout the world and in a variety of ways. And it's used to treat chronic pain, helping people with heart disease, PTSD, stress and anxiety, and can promote well-being. So the benefits: increased focus and memory, better energy,
Better sleep, you're more cognitive, your eating habits are improved through mindfulness meditation, your heart health is improved. It also slows the aging process, they find. The calmer people live longer. And most importantly, it reduces the depression and anxiety, and over time, our tendency towards diseases also.
And it can improve the brain function. I mentioned about the brain, being neuroplastic and really changing. And it's shown, the research has shown that it has helped with memory, emotional regulation, and persuasive and perspective thinking. And age doesn't matter. It changes, the brain is changing, and MRIs have shown that when you meditate, mindfulness meditation, your brain changes. It's like it's making, when you do the routine, it makes routes in your brains.
We've always talked about how the mind and the body are one, and that's why it's important to also look at your environment. Make sure that you increase your calmness, your clarity, permits one of the centers to see that the stressor is not real. Oftentimes we react to something that's not quite there, and mindfulness helps us to identify what is really present at the moment, to reduce the release of the cortisols and all those adrenalines that are affecting our behavior and our responses.
And there's a difference between a real-life stressor, something you really need to be concerned about, and one that is not a life-or-death situation. And I give the example of there's a gorilla in the room, and there's a legislator who acts like a gorilla, right? And so which one is the real stressor? Which one is a life-or-death situation if you're in a room? The legislator who acts like a gorilla is really not a stressor, shouldn't be a stressor. He is not, you let him be a stressor because you make him be a stressor. It is not a life or death situation. So mindfulness meditation will help you distinguish between the real life stressors from the perceived stressors. And you'll learn to respond, not just react. Here's another thing to think about when you're really angry, when you're having an unpleasant experience, your blood pressure's rising, you're getting really irritated, and you're being asked to make a decision. And it could result in an action that you later regret. So when you get in that situation,
they say to stop, to practice STOP, just stop. S for stop, take 2 to 3 breaths, bloat your stomach, release it 2 to 3 times, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, observe what's really going on, where am I at, then you proceed. Always stop.
And you can proceed with either you feel comfortable taking the action that you want to, or maybe talking to somebody else about it. But if you're in an agitated situation or wandering situation, don't be forced to do something that you might not be prepared to make that decision in. So the final result is when you start to practice mindfulness meditation, you're really beginning to know yourself, you're beginning to map your brain, you're going to claim back the power that you have over the situation, not be reacting, not be in control, but you'll control, you'll start living your potential, your full potential, and you'll start to see positive changes happen. And again, I have a handout that we prepared that has some other breathing exercises that were in you. So let me ask, are you going to meditate tomorrow before we start? Yes? You're going to do the military one? No? Or you're still not sure that mindfulness meditation will help you?
Yay.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
tonight, yeah,
tonight.
we're gonna demonstrate the big stomach, no stomach,
Yeah.
big stomach, no stomach.
If we have time later, we can, there's a couple more breathing exercises where we can turn down the lights and really try, but I know there's this spaced breathing, which is 4 in and 4 out. I'll just play a second of it just so we can hear it.
Learning this technique still can help you go to preparing for this priority.
This one is really good for, yeah.
Style breathing and direct back.
Before you go into a stressful situation, this is a really good one to do.
You'll hear it too. What you need to do is inhale. Inflate your belly freely, like a balloon. And then inflate it.
And then here's another one where it's 4 seconds. You breathe in, you hold for 7, and then you exhale for 8. And this one is also a very good one. It was... We need an interpreter for the English. So, just remember that space is not the next frontier. Your mind is. And it's a very powerful tool, and you have to try to capture and make the most of it. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit to wellness programs in the workplace. Also very important. We're talking about health and wellness. And, wellness really is just looking at activities, choices, lifestyles that lead to healthy practices and holistic health.
And the reasons that we want to develop a workplace wellness program is because right now we're constantly held hostage by technology. We don't have a moment's rest. We can go 24/7 and our phones are beeping when we're asleep, wake us up. Also, the stress levels continue to increase, and we also have more work we find in one given week. The week gets longer than it is. Also, many of us are struggling, and our communities are, with the cost of health. When we get sick, what is that price that we have to pay? So we always have to try to avoid that illness as best as we can. We know that in our islands, disease and obesity is the #1 cause of death, along with smoking. And a lot of times the poor diet and the physical inactivity is what is close to the factors that cause a lot of the disease and obesity. So we have to do better for ourselves and just make a conscious effort.
So wellness programs are designed to improve the employee health and well-being, and by prioritizing your employees' well-being, it helps them manage their stress, build the relationships, it improves their productivity, and it's, I think, become more obvious, especially during the COVID situation and others, that we have to be cognizant of mental health at work. I mean, we've seen many situations, and it's happened in Guam, unfortunately, where there have been disgruntled employees who have taken out action within a workplace. And you've read about some of the mass shootings in the U.S. of employees whose mental health hasn't been addressed. And when employees feel they're supported, they're more likely to do exceptional work. So, does your legislature have a wellness program? The next question, let's see. Yes, no, not sure, or you're planning for it? I know the Guam people haven't because I know they have one. So they didn't respond yet. Not sure.
Yeah, well.
Well, many, it seems, don't have a workplace program. And what are the benefits of it? You know, face it, you're at work more than you're at home. So if you don't take advantage of the fact that these people are at work, you're going to lose an opportunity to help promote healthy habits and really cut government costs. If you think about the cost to the government, health insurance, medical, etc., of not having a healthy workforce, you can really cut that by taking advantage of promoting healthy habits at work. And more than 80% of the businesses who have 50 or more employees in the U.S. have some sort of a wellness program.
So we know that there are many benefits. Some of the 4 that have been highlighted are lower turnover of employees, better company culture, higher productivity, and higher employee engagement. They're more happy to be involved and they produce for you.
Yeah. There's also reduced claims on workmen's compensation because, you know, they are less likely to have accidents at work, reduce absenteeism. It helps save costs because if these people are out or they have to retire quickly or they leave earlier for medical reasons, you have to train and reduce employees. And we've talked about this before, reducing stress, morale. They show that their employees who are involved in a wellness program are more adaptable. They learn new things. So as organizations change, as you think about implementing new things, the employees who are healthier respond better. They're more adaptable to change.
And they found that with the National Center of State Legislators that they did a polling on it, the burnout is the #1 concern for staffers, you know, just because they just don't have a good life-work balance. And so wellness programs can help in that regard. So these are some examples of workplace wellness programs that we've listed that you can offer to them, which also includes financial counseling, because oftentimes that could be what prevents them from making healthy choices in life.
Especially like at the judiciary, we actually had sessions on trying to help employees who, with their finances, helping them prepare budgets, thinking about it, because that can be a big stressor for many people. Healthy potlucks, good thing to do. Just encourage people, hey, we're going to potluck today, but it's going to be with a healthy menu. Mindfulness Mondays, we talked about the meditation. In some courts, what they've started is on Monday morning, and you've seen this, I don't know how many of you have traveled to like Japan, Korea, before they open the work, before they open the store, they bring people together and they're doing their exercise and their mindfulness meditation. So some courts on a Monday, they call it Mindfulness Monday. 10 minutes in the morning, they bring all the staff, even if it's by Zoom now, it's easy to bring them, and they help them with a different meditation program that's there. You can give articles and newsletters, easy to pick up and disseminate through your workforce so that they can think about that.
So there's also a lot of policy in addition to the legislature budgeting for health insurance and different subsidies of health insurance options and other programs. These are a few, for example, that we did in Guam. We have a law that establishes a wellness program within the Department of Education, so they can do BMI screeners for the kids, determine the health of the kids, and then develop programs within their schools. There's also a law that says that our medical health insurance that our government provides also has to have preventative health care, wellness, and fitness as a benefit. So, for example, you can go to a smoking cessation class, you can go to a dietitian counseling class, you can go to the gym. And And the executive order at the bottom was one of the things that allowed for the government agencies to create their programs within their agencies, but also to authorize them to give as much as 3 hours a week of administrative leave so people can exercise either in their programs in the unit, or they can go to the gym and they just get certification. So that was one thing that also helped. We also tried to mandate healthy foods in vending machines. That's a slow process because, you know, everybody usually looks for the King Car and the Diet and the Coke or the Diet Coke. But, you know, there are policies that you can do. Also, within the education, they had policies on mental health training for kids. So you can also identify, in addition to healthy bodies, where their minds might be unhealthy.
You can talk about Dalai Lama.
And this is one of the funniest, not funny, it's kind of sobering. The Dalai Lama was asked one time, you know, what is the most perplexing thing about humankind to you? And he said, the most perplexing thing to me about humankind is man, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money. And then he sacrifices his money to recuperate his health. And then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. And the result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he's never going to die. And then he dies having never really lived. So true. So that's what mindfulness can help us.
Then the last slide was just from Gandhi, and we kind of heard many people talk about it today, about health is the real wealth, and Gandhi also recognized that. He said health is really the real wealth. It's not pieces of gold and silver. So thank you. We're free to ask any questions. I don't know how we're doing for time. We're fine, I guess, and time's good, and gives us time to meditate before the softball game, possibly. But we're happy to answer any questions if anyone has, or if you don't want to ask it publicly, you're free to type it into the app anonymously, and I can see if we have any questions. Q&A. Oh, here, there is one. I have to now put on my glasses. How do you manage the impact of these stresses on the home front, was one question. And does taking your decision carefully is like you don't eat until you see what you want to eat? All right, let's do the first one about impact of stresses on the home front. And I mean, we talked about that. You know, the stress on you, the public criticism that people see of you as a senator has an impact on your family. And so, you know, what's the different ways that you can approach that? For us, what's important is we try to, as I mentioned, break bread with the family. We always set a time. Our family knows that we're going to come together as a family at this certain time. Usually it's Sunday afternoon, and sometimes it's Friday evening at the end of the work week. Everybody comes together, and we eat as a family. You know, we're not one in one room, one in another room, you know, playing on the phone. We try to get them to not use their devices when we eat as a family. And we talk as a family, even from the youngest to the oldest. And we pray as a family. We pray before every meal. And we have different children do the prayers so that they're involved at different times. And they know they have to be. And
I'm going to add something.
And then we create, as I said, we try to create memories. And since when I was, even when I was a lawyer I was a lawyer rep for the Ninth Circuit, and I was always traveling, doing conferences for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I was the chair of the lawyer rep coordination. I made it a point to bring my family. It was a financial burden, but you know, I was making more money when I was in private practice than I was making as a judge. But the memories that my children have, they're doing the same thing with their family. They realize that when they're together, I expose them. I think it's helped them, you know, grow up in their life, being exposed to a lot of these things. So I make it a point to try to take them. I've tried to take them to many Micronesian islands if I can. Unfortunately, they couldn't come on this trip because, school was on. And even when school was on, I've pulled them out of school. I've even fought faculty to say, look, they'll work on their homework, they'll do it, but the education they're going to receive by going to, see this place, by going to dive in Palau, by going to the Rock Islands, is going to be an education you can't replicate in the classroom. And so, I try to tell the teachers, there's more to it than that, and sometimes they're resistant, but ultimately they cave in and they understand. So is there anything else you want to add to that question?
On a practical side too, going back to the relationships and having a strong relationship, oftentimes you will have a tendency to bring your work home, your stressors home, your anger home. So what I do as a mother and a grandmother now is I involve myself in things with the family other than my work. So when they're there for dinner, I send them out to barbecue with Tata. I send them out to, do something, gather some basil in the garden or whatever. You keep them busy with you. If you're listening to radio to de-stress or some music to de-stress, have them there singing with you or doing something. So it's those practical things where rather than your world consuming their place when they're there with you, flip it and enjoy what they bring to it. So if they're there to eat, make them cook. You'll forget about your work problems. That's what I do. Little things like that. But we find that when you surround yourself with laughter, like you bring the kids into the house and let them make a mess, let them scream and have fun and do crazy things, that joy of hearing them laugh and being happy and carefree overrides your stress. So that's one of the things that I do practically, right? It's like you don't have to be fancy. Just kind of switch gears and say, all right, I'm not going to be a crazy, angry senator today. I'm going to be a happy grandma, and I'm going to laugh at them doing silly things. And this is my moment. This is what I want to do. I'm not going to let the stress flip me to do something crazy, scream at them, burn my food, cut my finger with a sharp knife. So it's those mindfulness things that can help you.
Another question is, does taking your decision carefully, is that sort of like not eating until you see what it is that you want to eat? And we talked about one of those mindfulness exercises that is stop, right? And to just stop, take 2 or 3 deep breaths, observe, and then proceed and make a decision. And in some ways, that's true about there's similarities with that. Usually before I make my plate at a fiesta, I go and scope out what's there. So I know what I'm going to take. I step back, I observe, I look, I say, okay, these telegrams look really good today. That's what my focus is going to be. Or like last night, you knew for me the breadfruit and the crab, and the lobster at another party. So there are some similarities. It's just be aware of what's going on. Don't just rush through and pick everything up on the table, and then at the end you realize, oh shucks, I'm not going to eat all of this. It's too much. And so there are similarities with that that's there. Another question. I'm going to give this question to Mary because it might be a case that comes before us. How do you deal with an authoritarian executive branch?
What you do is you engage them. I remember being in situations even outside of the legislature. I was in a situation when I was the manager at the airport where we couldn't get anywhere with a critical road project, banging heads with the boss above me. And sometimes you just have to be brave enough to say, may I have a meeting with you? A meeting with you with no consequence. If you don't like what I have to say, it never happened. Don't hold it against me. If you like what I have to say, we can take a second meeting. Sometimes you can't let the voice of, and I'm going to use bully interchangeably with authoritarian. You can't let the bully control you. That's where mindfulness also, I'm in this situation, I deserve to be here. This is my moment. We're going to make this happen. Stop, breathe, don't overreact. Authoritarian bully, same thing. A bully will always be a bully, but that doesn't prevent you from having a voice. So call out, make the meeting, write the letter, just keep going. That's the best way to deal with authoritarian.
Here's another, it's more of a comment than a question, but I like it, and I'll share it. Judge, if that's the natural color of your hair, then I need to start it.
It is, it is, it is.
And it is the color of my hair. I refuse to dye it, so not bad for a mid-60s guy, right? You know. Although Mary tells me I can't pretend I'm 16. That's why I got injured playing basketball, but you know. And then another one, and I think this is a good one. We kind of touched a little bit about it, and it's probably something I think Mary is would be very keen on talking with, and about dealing with colleagues who refuse to be a team player. You know, how do you deal with colleagues who just, won't play ball, won't be a team player, obstinate?
So what you do is, as we all know as legislators, it all comes down to numbers. It's always a numbers game. Whether our bills make it or not is a numbers game. So where you won't win over a friend, no matter what you do, no matter how stubborn they are, you just find however many votes you need. So it's not a matter of dealing with an unfriendly person, it's positivity. Okay, if that person is going to be my obstacle, who's going to be my bridge to where I need to go? So that's what it is. You just always just focus on the positive, which is I'm going to win this, I'm going to get this, and then you find the good people with you that are going to get you there. I mean, that's assuming that you're correct, which we are, right?
Responding to the gorilla in the room, not reacting to the gorilla in the room, right? I mean, there's always going to be people that way. We have them in the judiciary. I've dealt with when I chaired the Judicial Council as Chief Justice. There's some trial judges who, have their minds made up, or will always be questioning. And you just work it through. You try to explain the situation, and if you don't change them, you don't change them.
And sometimes you don't fight. And sometimes you just don't fight because you're just wasting time. You never win a bully.
Yeah. This is forcing people to ask a lot of questions, which is good, especially because, I think sometimes, and I know it's true for whether it's judges or legislators, my comedians, around, sometimes we're shy, we don't want to, raise our hand or ask a question publicly. So sometimes this anonymous questions gives you the chance to do stuff. But one of the, and I think, Mary, this is excellent for you. How do you manage differences between Republican and Democrat, or between, different opposition parties and a ruling party?
You allow them to say whatever they're going to say about you, and just don't let it change your opinion about what policy has to happen.
And I think for Mary,
it's difficult.
She conveys to me is, when she's elected, she's not a Republican or she's not a Democrat. She's there for the people. And so there may be Republican measures that she won't support because she doesn't feel it's the right measure. And there's measures and she gets a lot of broad support across party lines, both. And it's because she feels that, she has to do what's right, not based on strictly party lines.
But I think also if you just believe in your policy, as most of us do, we have an idea of what sound policy, a solution-driven policy is. And if you just focus on that and let all the noise around you just fall where they will, you'll be all right. That's really what it is. I believe in this. I'm going to get this through. I'm going to find my 8 friends that are going to make it pass. And that's all you do. And you let all the noise go. As they said in the one slide, garbage in, garbage out.
Another question is about how we manage our professional relationship, especially because of potential conflicts of interest. Well, first of all, we don't have pillow talk about work. I never discuss my cases with her. And while she can discuss some public issues with me, there are some confidential matters that she also can't discuss. In the nearly 20 years I've been on the bench, I think there's only been 2 cases that I've had to recuse myself on, where she was, as a result of her being a member of the legislature. And in fact, under our Code of Judicial Ethics in Guam, you can remain on a case even though there might be a conflict under the code if the parties consent. And so I think in one case it was a tax case that she didn't support a tax increase, and there was a challenge on the number of people necessary to pass the law. Was done with an amendment when Guam went from 21 senators to 15 senators. They didn't change the language in terms of what was required for a vote to pass legislation, and so that case came before the Supreme Court. And the governor objected to New City on the case, and so I didn't sit on it. But I think in the 8 years she's been in the legislature, and the 20 years I've been on the bench, I think that's been the only case I've had to recuse as a result of her being a member of the legislature for those cases. And then talking about how a judge and a politician, the other question was complement each other. It was interesting because I think it was back when my first detention election was the first time we were both on the ballot at the same time. Of course, one of the difficult things for me, as my wife is a politician, she's out there, is I can't go to any political event. I don't go to any political event. I can't be seen really in any political act as a justice. They can have a family picture of us, but the family picture can't even refer to me as a judge or justice. It's just, Mr. Robert Torres, as I like to say, Mr. Mary Torres. That's who I am. We have that aspect of it that is always difficult to balance. I can't go to events with her, and so sometimes I miss out on those things. She'll have to go to a political event or do stuff, but it's fine. That's something that we made the decision on. But I still tease her that, of course, it's unfair, but when we were both on the ballot, I think it was the first time in Guam history that a husband and wife were on the ballot at the same time, and I told her I got more votes than her. But of course, I was running against nobody. She was running against 30 people, so it's really not fair, right? Not a fair comparison.
But it does come down to what most of us are. We're public servants, right? We have it in us to sacrifice a lot to help the community. And I think we just happen to be, married and in that thing. So the dynamic is a little strong.
Oh, here's a really good one, and I'll give a perspective even from judiciary. It has a legislature. How do you reply when you're asked by different chat groups to join? Let me talk from my perspective first. As a judicial officer, there are certain standards we're required to uphold. So, like many, we have like a high school chat group, right? People who graduated from public readiness, class of 90, I'm not going to say here. So they're on this chat group, and people chat, and I don't ever voice an opinion if someone is saying something politically, but if they bring up something that could be a reflection of people in the group, like we had one classmate who had posted what was somewhat inappropriate comment. So I actually wrote on the material and I said, that's inappropriate, and if you continue to post information like this, I'm going to leave the chat, and I'm not going to be on. And then the other classmates chimed in and said, hey, what you said wasn't right also, and don't post. And now people are always saying, don't talk about politics in the chat, because people have different political views, so they tell me don't talk about politics in the chat. So, I'm on chat groups, like I'm on the high school team, my coach, we have a chat group. I'm on my high school class chat group. I'm on a judicial chat group from judges all around the world that are there. I'm on a chat group from judges on the Philippines because I've done a lot of judicial education there. So those kinds of chat groups, I think, are entirely appropriate, at least for someone like me. But again, you have to monitor the content. And you have to think, and if you're uncomfortable in the chat, then that's likely maybe you shouldn't be in the chat. And you can, I think, gauge that yourself.
Yeah. No, absolutely, because one of the things that we always worry about is what is said that you can never take back, right, in our world. with technology and things that are out there. So a lot of times it's just play it safe, and you can decline a chat group. There's no real shame. I think that's what we have to empower us right now, is just to know what our limits are, what our boundaries are, and when we can say no. And self-care is not selfish. It's not being selfish or being a bad politician. It's knowing that you're a healthy, conscientious, mindful, effective politician. And the only way to do it is to, control your life, really, and what's good for you. So that's just the practical.
And there's one more, maybe, it's a question, and if you could have it, and how important is Mr. Time? Well, time is important, but at the same time, make the most of your time. And I think, maybe really that understanding that it is short, but you can make it longer. And as we indicated, mindfulness meditation, being in control of the moment yourself will help you, help the aging process, help slow the mind. And I think you'll find that just by doing it a little at a time, getting started, learning about it, it will truly help you and I think lead you to bigger and better things. So with that, thank you for your interaction. What a great, I'm so happy with the interaction that we got off the anonymous questions and the polling. I'm glad it worked out. And the Wi-Fi held up. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, everybody. And again, thank you for our gracious host from the FSM for all you've done for us. And I look forward to seeing some more countries like that. Thank you.
You're going to disconnect now?
Yeah.
Thank you for the presenters, honorable presenters, because one is Justice Torres and the other one is Senator Torres. Thank you. It's very enlightening and very helpful. And those sending you the messages, no good. Just kidding. On a serious note, this presentation concludes the day, so that's a good news. Just kidding. Announcement. 1, no softball game. Rain out. And I asked that they replace softball with basketball because that's my sport. And they said no. So that's that. And okay, the chair is getting conflicting marching orders.
Who told you there's no softball? That's good. It's good.
This speaker and the speaker, the legislature, and chairman of protocol.
Okay. How about it, Tony?
So let's take a quick break for brainstorming, because I should have messaged the Justice Torres that what I do in a case like this, being hamburgered, burned, too many power players. So let's recess for a minute. Okay, Walden. The Secretary and the Treasurer take me out of it. They are hereby declare no game and part of health. Call rest up so that tomorrow morning, in the morning at 9 o'clock, I will call to order, no yawning. Understood? Meeting adjourned for the day.